office.
Welcome back. Tonight, we're in the hours most people sleep through. The night shift. There's something about those empty corridors and humming machines that loosens the rules a little. The 3 accounts we have tonight left me unsettled in ways I'm still working through. A routine delivery. Wrong dock, wrong hour, wrong whatever was waiting there. The driver filed a report. Here's what it said. The man outside loading dock 3 pressed his face against the wire-reinforced glass, and when I looked up, he did not move. It was 2:17 a.m. I was alone in the receiving office, a small room that sits elevated above the dock floor, with a window that faces the exterior bay doors. The light inside the office was on. The dock outside was dark. He could see me clearly. I could just barely see him. I work overnight, receiving at a grocery distribution center. The facility is large, but the receiving office is isolated. One interior door that locks, one window facing the dock, no direct line of sight to the main warehouse floor. The radio sits on the desk. I use it to coordinate with the forklift operators. But between 1 a.m. and 4 a.m., the dock is usually quiet and I'm mostly doing paperwork. The hum of the refrigeration units bleeds through the walls on slow nights. That night it sounded louder than usual, or maybe everything else was just too still. I reached for the radio without looking away from the window. I told myself he was probably a truck driver who had pulled in early, confused about the entrance. They come to the wrong door sometimes, but truck drivers knock, they wave, they look for a buzzer. This man was just standing there, face against the glass, both hands at his sides. Still enough that for a moment I wondered if I was actually seeing what I thought I was seeing. I called the floor supervisor on the radio. Got static. Called again. More static. The radio had been cutting out all week. I had written it up twice. I picked up the desk phone and dialed the main floor extension. It rang 11 times and no one answered. I looked back at the window. He was gone. The dock outside was empty, just the yellow stripe of painted concrete barely visible in the ambient light. I felt the specific relief of a threat that seems to have passed, that loosening in the chest when you convince yourself you overreacted. I turned back to my desk and tried the radio again. It crackled once and went silent. Then I heard the exterior bay door handle move, not the window. The door, which is at dock level, below and to the left of the office. A big rolling door, but beside it, there's a personnel entry. A regular hinged door with a push bar on the outside, kept locked from 10 p.m. onward. I heard the bar depress. The door held. He pushed it twice more in quick succession, testing it, methodical and unhurried, and then it went quiet. I stared at the interior office door. I had locked it when I came on shift out of habit. My hand went to the handle anyway to check it. Locked. I pressed my back against the desk and watched the door and did not move for a long time. The refrigeration hum filled every second of that silence. At 3:40 a.m., the day supervisor arrived early and let himself in through the main entrance. I met him on the floor and told him what had happened. He walked the exterior of the building with me. The personnel door at Dock 3 had a fresh gouge along the door frame at latch height, like something thin had been worked into the gap. It had not been there at the start of my shift. He said it was probably an old mark. He said it without looking at the frame for very long. The police took a report. No one was found on the property. The exterior camera covering Dock 3 had been recording, but the footage showed only the empty bay from 12 a.m. onward. The timestamp ran continuously. Nothing was missing from the feed. The camera had been angled up by roughly 15 degrees from its usual position, just enough to clear the ground-level door from frame entirely. Someone had moved it before my shift started. That much was agreed on. No one agreed on anything after that. This next one trades a threat you can see for one you can't. My supervisor told me I'd already been in the building for 3 hours, but I had just walked through the front door at 2:17 a.m. I set my bag down on the security desk. He looked at me the way you look at someone who is lying to your face. He pulled up the access log on his screen and turned it toward me. My badge number. My name. Entry scan at 11:04 p.m., exit scan at 11:51 p.m. Entry scan again at 12:38 a.m. I watched him read it twice as if he was checking his own certainty. I told him my badge had been on my wrist all night. I showed him the clasp. He did not say anything after that. I work overnight inventory at a mid-sized distribution warehouse. 12 aisles, concrete floors, fluorescent lights that hum at a frequency that gets into your back teeth after an hour. There are 4 of us on the floor during a normal shift, and 2 supervisors who rotate between the office and the loading dock. That night, I was running aisle 7 alone. At around 2:40 a.m., I found my clipboard on the floor in aisle 9. I had not been in aisle 9. I had left the clipboard on the cart at the head of aisle 7 when I went to the break room at 1:50 a.m., where the coffee sitting in the pot since 10 o'clock smelled burnt and faintly metallic in the way bad coffee does at that hour. The clipboard was sitting face down on the concrete between 2 pallet stacks, the pen still clipped to the top. I picked it up, and I noticed the cold first, the kind of specific, damp cold that comes off pallet wrap at 3 a.m., the kind that makes the air feel thicker than it should. 3 of my count sheets had been filled in. The handwriting was mine. The counts were wrong. I walked the length of aisle 9. Nothing moved. I went back to my cart, and I did not put the clipboard down again. By 3:15 a.m., I told both supervisors. One of them pulled the interior camera footage. The warehouse has coverage on every main aisle and both entry points. Camera 4 covers aisle 7 end to end. The footage from 12:38 a.m. to 1:49 a.m. showed my cart sitting unattended at the aisle head, exactly where I said I had left it. It also showed someone sitting in my cart seat with their back to the camera. Same jacket I was wearing, same height. They sat without moving, head slightly down, and then stood, picked up the clipboard, and walked toward aisle 9. The camera angle cuts off before aisle 9. 41 minutes. That is how long they sat there. The supervisor called the other 2 floor workers in from their aisles. Nobody had seen anyone. The loading dock had been locked from the inside since midnight. There is 1 entrance and 1 exit to this building, and both require a badge scan. The access log showed only 4 badges active after midnight. Mine, and the other 3 workers who had been on camera in their own aisles continuously. At 4:02 a.m., my supervisor told me to wait in the office while they finished checking the building. I sat in the plastic chair next to his desk, the hard plastic cold through the thin material of my work trousers in a way that stayed uncomfortable no matter how still I sat. The office has a narrow window that looks out over the main warehouse floor. A monitor hummed on the desk beside me. I watched the lights down in aisle 9. They sat still for a long time. Then one of them swung. Just once. No settling. No drift. The way a light swings when someone walks under it quickly and keeps moving. The building check came back clear. My supervisor filed an incident report and told me it was probably a glitch in the access system, a camera artifact, a trick of the angle. He used the word probably 3 times in 2 sentences. He did not look at the aisle 9 window again after that. I have not gone back to that job. What I think about most is not the figure in my seat or the filled-in count sheets. It is the access log. 4 entry scans that night. 4 workers accounted for on camera. The math is clean. The math is correct. That is exactly what bothers me. Some threats follow you home, but this last one never quite leaves the building. Ward 7 had been closed for 11 months. The overnight staff knew that, which is why the call light on bed 4 was so difficult to explain. This is what they found. The patient in room 714 asked me how I was settling in, but room 714 had been empty and locked since before I started working there. I had checked it myself at the top of the round. I was standing in the hallway, 6 feet from the closed door, holding my clipboard, and I heard it clearly through the door. A woman's voice, unhurried, conversational. The question you'd ask a new colleague on their 3rd week, not their first, not their last, but specifically their 3rd, as though she'd been keeping track. I had been on the ward for 3 weeks at that point. Ward 7 is a general medical unit, 12 rooms down a single corridor, nursing station at one end. utility room, and linen storage at the other. The corridor lighting runs dim overnight, a pale blue-white that flattens everything and makes distances feel subtly wrong, the way photographs of familiar places look wrong when the light source has moved. At night, the ward runs on 2 nurses and a healthcare assistant, which is me. My job is observations, basic care, and keeping the corridor quiet. Room 714 was flagged on the handover sheet every night as out of service. The previous occupant had been moved to a specialist unit, and the room was being held pending a deep, clean, and maintenance inspection. The key lived in a locked box at the nursing station. I had never seen the room open. I had never seen anyone enter or leave it. I stood in the hall for a moment and listened. Nothing more from behind the door. The corridor was quiet except for the low sound of the ward, monitors from other rooms, the ventilation system, the soft roll of a supply trolley somewhere further down. I told myself it was nothing. Sound carries strangely in hospitals at night, bouncing off hard floors and bare walls in ways that are difficult to trace. I went to the nursing station and told the senior nurse, Priya, what I'd heard. She listened carefully and then walked the corridor with me. We stood outside 714 together. Silence. Priya took the key from the box and opened the door. The room was empty. Bed stripped to the mattress, the overhead light off, the curtain pulled around the window. The air was colder than the corridor, noticeably so, with a stillness to it that felt less like vacancy and more like patience. Priya switched on the light, looked around, checked the bathroom, and said the ventilation in unoccupied rooms sometimes carries sound from adjacent spaces. Room 712 was occupied. It was possible. We locked 714 and went back to work. At 3:20 a.m., I was doing the final round. Every other room was either asleep or settled. I got to 714 and stopped walking. The light under the door was on, a thin line of yellow warmth against the corridor floor, steady and inhabited, the kind of light a room makes when someone inside has been there a while and has no intention of leaving. I had watched Priya switch it off. The key had gone back into the locked box. I called for Priya on the radio. She came down from the station. She looked at the light under the door, took out the key, and unlocked it. The light was off. The room was dark, the same unnatural cold as before, and on the pillow of the stripped bed there was a single impression, a shallow compression in the bare mattress, the shape a head makes after a long, still night. Then from somewhere behind me in that dark room, unhurried as before, "You can head off, love. Priya usually does this one herself." Priya was standing right beside me. She had heard it too. I know because her hand found my arm before I could speak, and she held it there all the way back to the station. She reported it to facilities that morning. The room has never been reassigned. I stop before I reach that door now. I have to, because I keep going back. I don't fully understand why. Neither does Priya. She stops there too. I've been doing this long enough that most stories don't follow me home. These ones did. I left the hallway light on, which I never do. If you enjoyed tonight, leave a comment. Stay safe out there. I'll see you next time.